This is a presentation over the untold story of Emmett Lewis Till by Joshua Elam, Ethan Curtis, Lane Whitman, and Daniel Cape. The untold story of Emmett Lewis Till was directed by Keith Bucamp and released August 17th, 2005. Keith Bucamp is an award-winning author and director. He was born July 2nd, 1971. Bucamp lives in Brooklyn and makes his films there. Bucamp won Special Jury Award and Audience Award in 2005 at the Miami Film Festival for the documentary film The Untold Story of Emmett Till. He was also nominated for the Black Reel Award in 2006 for the same film. His first encounter with the Emmett Till story was at age 10 while looking through an issue of Jet magazine. He started his own research and found microfilm of articles which listed witnesses who had not been questioned by police and the information on the uncharged murderers. With the help of other researchers, Bucamp contacted witnesses to unveil the story. Researching and creating the film took 9 years. Bucamp shared a similar story with Emmett. In 1989, he was dragged out of a nightclub and beaten for dancing with a white girl.
Emmett Till was born July 25th, 1941 in Chicago, Illinois. Emmett was a very mischievous child growing up. He liked to pull pranks on his family and friends. He lived like there was no danger. People said he was infectiously happy. Emmett grew up in a working class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. Emmett attended a segregated elementary school. Mommy Till was the mother of Emmett. She was really brave for taking the case court. Mommy was very persistent on getting justice for her son. On the day of the funeral, Mommy left the casket open so that others could see what she seen and feel the things that she felt for her son. Roy Bryant and J.W. William were the guys who took Emmett. They were taken to court for a trial over the incident. They later confessed for $4,000, and due to the double jeopardy rule, they went unpunished. Caroline Bryant was the woman who Emmett supposedly whistled at the convenience store.
It was more like we were sisters and brothers almost, because my mother raised him while I went to work. So it was like he was hers, and I knew I was hers, and we had fun together. We laughed together. We never did much fighting until he and I moved alone, and it would become necessary to discipline him ever so often.
I don't know if prankster will be the right term or not, but I'll just give you an example of his fun-loving ways. Once we were in Chicago with him, and we were walking down 63rd Street in St. Louis, and he yelled out, "Here are my two big cousins from the suburbs. Nobody can beat them up." So we grabbed them up and shut them up right quick. So that was fun to him, but it wasn't so funny to us at the time.
Emmett was mischievous. He liked to play, and he had no sense of danger. Everything was funny to him. And he shot some firecrackers within the city limit, which was a no-no. He didn't do things like that, but to him, that was funny.
Emmett Lewis Till was born on July 25th, 1941 in Chicago, Illinois. He was an only child of Lewis and Mamie Till. Till never knew his father because he was a private in the United States Army during World War II. Mamie and Lewis Till were separated in 1942. 3 years later, the family got word from the army that the soldier had been executed for willful misconduct while serving in Italy. Emmett's mother, by all accounts, was an extraordinary woman. Even though there were many things going against her at that time, she was able to excel both academically and professionally. She was only the fourth black student to graduate from suburban Chicago's predominantly white Argo Community High School, and the first black student to make the school's A honor roll. She did all this while raising Emmett and being a single mother. She would work long hours for the Air Force as a clerk in charge of confidential files. Emmett was raised in a middle-class black neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. The neighborhood was a haven for black-owned businesses, and the streets he roamed as a child were lined with black-owned insurance companies, pharmacies, and beauty salons, as well as nightclubs that drew the likes of Duke Ellington and Sarah Bangan. Those that knew Till would best describe him as responsible, funny, and very high-spirited. He was stricken with polio at the age of 5, but he was able to make a full recovery. But he would have a slight scar that remained with him for the rest of his life. His mother would often work more than 12-hour days. Being this, she could not take on all the responsibilities in the house, and Emmett gladly took over those responsibilities. As his mother would say, everything was really on his shoulders, and Emmett took it upon himself. He told me if I would work and make the money, he would take care of everything else. He cleaned and cooked quite a bit, and even took over the laundry. Till would attend the all-black McCosh Grammar School. All of his classmates would say that he was a funny guy and had loads of jokes. In August 1955, Till's great-uncle, Moses Wright, came up from Mississippi to visit the family in Chicago. When he was about to leave, Wright was planning to take Till's cousins, Wheeler Parker, back to Mississippi with him to visit relatives down south. And when Till, who was just 14 years old at that time, figured out that that was their plan, he begged his mother to go along with them. At first, Till's mother was very much opposed to the idea. She wanted to take a road trip to Omaha, Nebraska, and tried to convince him to go with her, with the promise of open road driving lessons. But Till really wanted to spend time with his cousins in Mississippi. This would be a fateful decision that would have great impact on their lives and the course of American history. Till's mother relented and let him go. The day before Till left with his uncle and his cousins from Mississippi, his mom gave him a signet ring engraved with the initials LT. The next day, she drove her son to 63rd Street Station in Chicago. They would kiss goodbye, and Till would board on the southbound train headed for Mississippi. It was the last time they ever saw each other. 3 days after arriving in Money, Mississippi, on August 24th, 1955, Emmett Till and a group of teenagers entered Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market to buy some drinks after a long day of picking cotton in the hot sun. What exactly happened inside the grocery store that afternoon will probably never be known. but Till purchased bubblegum, and in later accountants, he was accused of either whistling at, flirting with, or touching the hand of the store's white female clerk and wife of the owner, Carolyn Bryant. Then 4 days later, at approximately 2:30 a.m. on August 28, 1955, Roy Bryant, which was Carlson's husband, and his half-brother, J.W. Millam, kidnapped him from Moses Wright's home. Then they beat the teenager brutally, dragged him to the bank of the Tallahatchie River, shot him in the head, tied him with barbed wire to a large metal fan, and shoved his mutilated body into the water. Moses Wright would report Till's disappearance to the local police station, and 3 days later his corpse was pulled out of the river. Till's face was so beaten beyond recognition, and Wright only managed to identify him because of the ring on his finger that was engraved with his father's initial, LT. Then Till's body was shipped to Chicago, where his mother wanted to have an open casket funeral with Till's body on display for 5 days. There would be thousands of people come to the Roberts Temple Church of God to see what happened and the brutal attack that they did to him. Till's mother said that despite the enormous pain it caused her to see her son's dead body on display, she opted for an open casket funeral in an effort to let the world see what has happened, because there was no way I could describe this, and I needed someone to help me tell what it was like. Having an open casket funeral, there would be more than 100,000 people that would see his body lying in the casket in Chicago. In the weeks that passed between Till's burial and the murder and the kidnapping trial of Roy Bryant and J.W. Millam, two black publications, Jet Magazine and the Chicago Defender, published graphic images of Till's corpse. By the time the trial would come to an end on September 19, 1955, Emmett's murder had become a source of outrage and fight throughout the country. Since black people and women were not allowed to serve jury duty, Bryant and Millam were tried before an all-white, all-male jury. Moses Wright would be brave enough to identify Bryant and Millam as the kidnappers and killers. At that time, it was almost unheard of for blacks to accuse whites in court. By doing this, Wright put his own life in grave danger. Even though it was very obvious of the defendant's guilt and widespread plea for justice from outside Mississippi, on September 23rd, the panel of white male jurors acquitted Bryant and Millam of all charges. Their discussion would last only 67 minutes, and only a few months later, in January of 1956, Bryant and Millam admitted to the crime. Protected by double jeopardy laws, they told the whole story of how they kidnapped and killed Emmett Till and to Look magazine for $4,000. J.W. Millam and Roy Bryant died with Emmett's blood on their hands. Would say Simon Wright. Emmett Till's cousin and eyewitness to the kidnapping later stated, and it looks like everyone else who is involved is going to do the same. They had a chance to come clean. They will die with Emmett Till's blood on their hands. Only 1 year after the Supreme Court's landmark decision in the Brown versus Board of Education, decision in Brown v. Board of Education would end the racial segregation in public schools. Emmett's death would provide important information for the American Civil Rights Movement. 100 days after Till's murder, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the Alabama city bus. This would spark a year-long monumentary bus boycott. Nine years later, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This would outlaw many forms of racial discrimination and segregation. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act would outlaw discriminatory voting practices was finally passed. Even though Emmett's mother would never stop feeling the pain of her son's death, it would help open the eyes of America to the racial hatred that was happening in the country, and in doing that, it would start a massive protest movement for racial equality and justice. Over 6 decades after Till's brutal abduction and murder, in January 2017, Timothy Tyson, author of The Blood of Emmett Till and a senior research scholar at Duke University, would say that in 2007, interview Carol Bryant Donham admitted to him that she had lied about Till making advances. She would say that part is not true. She also told Tyson nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him, and admitted she felt tender sorrow for his mother. The purpose of this movie would be to show what the colored people had to go through at this time and how unfair it was for them during this time. It would show that there was a true problem in the South. There was no reason for them to be treated like the way they were. There was nothing that was wrong with them, and sure, nothing that should have affected people like Emmett to be treated the way they were.
The life for African Americans in the South during Jim Crow was as close to a repressive regime as you could imagine. Blacks could not eat in public restaurants, couldn't rent hotel rooms, literally had to ride in the back of buses or public transportation.
We couldn't get a drink of water because how thirsty we were. Unless we found that colored water fountain, we couldn't get a drink of water out of a fountain. Our school term was from 4 to 6 months a year, and we had no buses. There were no buses that bused us to school. We had to walk to school 3, 4, 5 miles, whatever, distance we lived from the school.
African Americans were forced to live in certain communities, and they had to develop within that community. And there was not much difference between segregation in the South and apartheid in South Africa.
The argument of the film the director Keith Beauchamp is attempting to prove is the case was skewed in favor of Bryant and Milam because they were white. The racism issue at the time caused the white jury to vote in favor of the defendants. The primary claim is the confession to murder from Milam and Bryant. This is made after the trial.
when I saw the antics that were going on in the courtroom, I could tell that everything was against us. And when the jury retired to render their verdict, I noticed that the black people who were lining the walls and the backs of the room, they were quietly leaving the courtroom. And I knew then that they knew we were not going to get a guilty verdict. And I said to my party, it's time for us to go. Congressman Diggs said to me, and miss the verdict? I said, this is one you don't want to hear. The verdict is not guilty. To satisfy me, they agreed to leave. And I guess about 45 minutes away from the courtroom, the verdict came in not guilty.
Mrs. Bryant, how about you, Mrs. Miles? Did you expect this verdict? Well, I was hoping for.
The director portrayed white people as unsympathetic and detached. The director neglects to show the counter-argument, which emphasizes the black's point of view. White people in the United States have always been discriminative against black people. The film causes the audience to connect with the Till's family through the emotional interviews. This causes empathy for those who have suffered from racism. The horrifying pictures of Emmett's body also contributes to this.
I saw his tongue had been choked out and it was lying down on his chin. I saw that this eye was out and it was lying about midway the cheek. I looked at this eye and it was gone. I looked at the bridge of his nose and it looked like someone had taken a meat chopper and chopped it. And I looked at his teeth because I took so much pride in his teeth. His teeth were the prettiest things I'd ever seen in my life, I thought. And I only saw two. Who were the rest of them? They'd just been knocked out. And I was looking at his ears. His ears were like mine. They curled, they're not attached, and they curled up. The same way mine are. And I didn't see the ear. Where's the ear? And that's when I discovered a hole about here, and I could see daylight on the other side. I said, now, was it necessary to shoot it? If that's a bullet hole, was that necessary? And I also discovered that they had taken an axe and they had gone straight down across his head, and the face and the back of the head were separate.
The attitude towards this documentary is informative because the director employs actual pictures and clips from the case. The tone the director wants to make clear is disgust towards white people and he achieves it by having a vivid description of the corpse, as well as several interviews to make Bryant and Milam stop appearing human.
In this film, the director uses the cinematic technique called medium shot in the interviews. This technique shows the top half of a person. Another technique he uses is panning. The director pans across different pictures of Emmett to add effect to them. The structure of the film is unusual. It consists of interviews, old pictures, and black and white videos from the 50s. All of the footage is real and not acted out, which adds to the validity of the film. This also gives it a historical film feel, which conveys it as accurate.
What then been done? Justice will be served. Thank you.
He whistled at a white woman and ended up dead at the bottom of a river. The 1955 lynching of Emmett Till was a key turning point in the civil rights movement. Now, nearly 50 years later, the Justice Department is reopening this case. A film called The Untold Story of Emmett Lewis Till helped renew interest in this case. Now we're going live to Washington, D.C. The Justice Department holding a news conference. They plan to reopen a murder investigation, a murder that's almost 50 years old and helped inspire part of the civil rights fight. Let's listen.
I'm pleased to announce a federal-state partnership to investigate the murder of Emmett Till. Federal prosecutors and FBI agents today are being assigned to investigate the Emmett Till murder in partnership with the District Attorney's Office and local law enforcement. Their findings will serve as the basis for any possible prosecution. Emmett Till unwittingly played a pivotal role in launching the modern civil rights movement. We owe it to Emmett Till, we owe it to his mother and to his family, and we owe it to ourselves to see if after all these years, any additional measure of justice is still possible. Thank you.
Emmett was the catalyst that started the civil rights movement. Because when people saw what had happened to this little 14-year-old boy, they knew then that not only were men, black men, in danger, but black children as well. And it took something to stir people up and let them know that we're either going to stand together or we're going to fall together. I do know that without the shedding of blood, there is no redemption. And I do know that the Lord appeared to me in a vision, and he told me that Emmett was not mine, that he belonged to him, and that God had chosen him for this particular mission.